So I actually changed my mind on what I wanted to do next in this video, which I want to go through the explosions and the mushrooms next before I get into the actual management classes, because I want those to be last, so we have all the backbone for all the management. So here we see the explosion factory. I make an array of 10 explosions. This is a singleton again, by the way. And then in the initialization, so the default constructor, I just construct the new explosions. And then the only actually public thing I have in here is the call for a new explosion at a position. And what that does is it just goes in and says, hey, is this explosion exploding in the array? And if not, then it calls explode in the explosions class. The explosions class is another simple class. So I only have one type of explosion, as we saw when I was playing the game. Excuse me. So here in the default constructor, I just set everything to about the correct sizes that I want. And then in the explode function, I take in a position that I need to explode at, set my position to that, set exploding equal to true, set the new position, and play sound, the sound of an explosion. If exploding, so if we're drawing this, then throughout then I animate it. So this is the timer. So if once we get to 0.8 of a second, it stops exploding, and will reset itself to off screen and not exploding. If we are still exploding, then we go to the next frame. And I have this little check in here because so that we can get that very first frame of the explosion. And then we draw the explosion. So now let's check out the mushrooms. First I will go to the mushroom field. So here's the mushroom field. This is also a singleton. Mushroom field doesn't have a default constructor. It just takes in the amount of shrooms it's called in the instance thing. So I figured this is as good a value as any const. So then we fill in the map here. This is where we initialize everything. We take random values for the grid values, and we use those positions to spawn the mushrooms, which are spawned through a mushroom factory. And then we use a list to connect all the mushrooms together. We'll see how I would use this soon. So the Schwarry shroom, this is normally called from a mushroom, or this is called from a mushroom, my bad. When the mushroom is destroyed, it calls back to this, kind of like an observer. And at this point, it gets rid of the mushroom at the position in the double array, and then sets the recheck flag to the Y row for the centipede. Now the spawn mushroom, this isn't called just from this. This is actually called from a few classes. It takes in a actual X and Y, not a grid position. So then it converts to a grid position. And 8 is the width or the height of every height and width of pretty much every sprite. And then 24 is the height of every sprite plus or minus the also 12 from the that comes in, or plus minus the 16 that's in the top HUD area. So when the game starts, you have those numbers at the very top of the screen. It's that. It's so that I can get it down to 0. And then we spawn the mushroom at this area and set the array pointer to whatever the mushroom factory returns for the spawn of the mushroom. We set the recheck flag to the row, and then we add the mushroom to the list. So this is for the invisible shrooms that go behind the high score. They didn't really work out very well, but this would have caused the mushrooms to be invisible, so therefore the mushrooms would be there, so the players couldn't collide with it, or so the Centipede couldn't go through and stuff. The reset, this is for resetting the entire mushroom map. This isn't healing. This is the real reset of if we go from the AI player to the actual player, the whole mushrooms like reset. So mushrooms completely reset, and then we spawn new mushrooms. So this is for the flea. Counts number of mushrooms within the player area to determine whether or not the flea should spawn. So this is called by the AI spawner class, and it checks whether or not it should spawn. And it goes through the rows that it needs to, that are actually in the player, which is 23 through 30 are in the player area. And the mushroom map then, if there's a mushroom, it subtracts from the maximum amount of mushrooms that there can be for a flea to spawn, or that there has to be for a flea to spawn. And if there's less than the max, then spawn the flea. Yeah. So check poison. This is called by the Centipede class. What this does is it takes in an X and a Y value in a direction and checks if that mushroom is poisoned, if there's a mushroom there, and if it is poisoned. If there's no mushroom there, or if the X and Y values are out of bounds, or if it's not poisoned, or if it's not poisoned, it'll return false, which we'll see in the mushroom class. And if any of these don't check out, it also returns false. So the next mushroom isn't poisoned. Okay, this... Sorry, headset again. This is called from the Scorpion class and the Spider class to check if there is a mushroom at a certain grid location. So it takes in their position, converts it to grid, and then calls it, and then returns the mushroom. And if it can't find a mushroom, then it will return 0. If it can, then it will return the actual pointer to the actual mushroom. And if any of these things don't make it or turn out to be false, then it also just returns 0. Closest shroom, this is called from the Centipede, returns the number of cells the Centipede will need in order to hit another mushroom. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It runs through the x-axis of the axis of the grid, and adds how many cells it's able to get through, and will return the amount of cells. So the x position minus the y, the x position, so that's where the actual mushroom is, minus the x, which is the initial where the Centipede is, multiplied by direction, which is either +1 or +1 or -1. And if it's -1, then it goes that way. +1, or if it's -1, it goes left. If it's +1, it goes right. Heal shrooms. This goes through and would heal the shrooms, and heals the shrooms. I couldn't get the timing figured out. You probably saw this in the video. I couldn't get the timing figured out on healing the mushrooms one at a time. Or rather, I should say, I didn't have time for it. Because I figure if I paused everything else and then just did those one at a time and had like a timer, I could get through it. But I digress. So it just calls a healing function if the mushroom exists. So now let's go to the mushroom factory. I'm sure this video is this section's getting pretty long, but that's okay. So here we have the singleton of mushroom factory, and it only has a couple of methods: spawn, shroom, and reset. The 900 grid, so 30 times 30, 900. So it has the maximum amount of mushrooms that it will create, or that will have to be created. And I didn't want to make it an arbitrary value just because of the fact that there could be extra mushrooms spawned in, and I didn't want to limit it to that. And this is created at the very beginning of the game anyway, so it's very front-loaded. There's not collision on any of these mushrooms, so and they're not being drawn. So we spawn the mushroom. We go through the mushroom array, and if the mushroom isn't active, then we activate the mushroom. We heal it up to full health, and we send it on its way. Yeah. So the reset is for resetting all the mushrooms. What this does is this doesn't actually destroy the mushrooms. What destroy is, in this case, is it's a deactivating function, pretty much. So let's go into the mushrooms real quick here. So here's the mushroom. Here's the initializing mushroom. As we can see, it's pretty standard. Heal, health is 0. Health is actually registered to be the frame index in this, but we also set poison to false. Activate, so this transfers the actual coordinates that it's given or the grid coordinates it's given into actual position, so it spawns at that position. Then we register its collision. Set active equal to true. And we set the position for the sprite. If it's active, draw it. Collision. So here we have, if it's active, if we collide with a fired bullet, and if the health is not its maximum health, or it's, I guess, it's kind of inverse, lowest health. So the higher you go in the health, the lower your health actually is. We add 1 to the health. We go to next frame. If it is at the maximum health, so if it's the smallest it can be, then we destroy the mushroom at the position. This is called in the mushroom field. So this is what I'm talking about the callback. Then we call destroy, reset the bullet. Eat is when like the spider will eat this. Destroy this mushroom at position in the mushroom field. We call destroy on this mushroom. Get position returns the actual position of the mushroom. And then, as we can see, destroy doesn't actually destroy. It just deregisters collision, sets active equal to false, and sets it off screen. Now, I have a couple of functions in here that are very small, and they only return one thing, so that's why I have them in here. So what these are is active, returns whether or not it's active, is poison, returns poison, get health, returns health, and poison, this is called from the scorpion, sets poison equal to true, and adds 4 frames to the animation, to where the animation is going to be. So it adds it to the health. So that means if the mushroom's partially destroyed, then the mushroom will be partially destroyed but poisoned. It sets the new maximum number of frames. Yeah, so that's all the mushrooms and explosions. We'll do management next. That includes, we'll probably have to take 2 things, but it includes all the managers. Cool.